The day my own son stopped calling me mother, I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought my heart would break into pieces. But no, I just sat quietly on the edge of my bed, my hands resting on my lap, and listened to the clock ticking on the wall. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Each sound felt heavier than the one before. It was a winter evening, the kind where the air feels still and tired. My old house smelled of turmeric and soap, the same smell that had filled it for 35 years. I had just finished folding the laundry when he said it, not angrily, not even loudly. He just said it in a different way, and that was enough. Double quotes, Mrs. Core, please don't worry. I'll handle it. Mrs. Core, not Ma, not even Amy, just Mrs. Core. I smiled, maybe out of habit. My mouth remembered the motion, even when my heart didn't understand. I nodded and said, of course, Beta. But inside, something small and warm went cold. I could feel it like a candle going out quietly in a big, empty room. You know, when children are small, they call you every few minutes. Asterisk, Ma, look at this, Ma, help me. And one day, without warning, they stop. You don't even notice the exact moment it happens until one day, you hear your name instead of mother, and you realize it's been a long time since you've been called that. That evening, after he left, I sat near the window and watched the sky turn from gray to black. The streetlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought of all the nights I had stayed awake for him when he was sick, or scared, or just lonely. And now, I was the lonely one. When I look back now, I don't see the pain first, I see the laughter. Our small house used to be full of it, the kind that travels through walls and settles in corners like sunlight. We didn't have much, just a two-room home in a narrow street, walls painted the color of old butter. But oh, how happy we were. My husband Harjit worked as a school teacher. I stayed home, raised our son, and made sure no one ever went hungry or unloved under my roof. Our son, Amin, was the light of our lives. From the day he was born, I felt like God had placed a piece of my heart outside my body. He was a quiet child, always curious. He would sit on the floor beside me while I kneaded dough and ask 100 questions. Ma, why do stars shine? Ma, where do birds sleep? And I'd smile and make up answers, half truth, half magic. I remember how he used to follow me everywhere. Even when I went to the market, he'd hold the edge of my dupatta and walk behind me, humming to himself. The shopkeepers used to tease him. Aman, when will you let your ma breathe? And he'd puff his chest proudly. She's my best friend. I think that was my favorite time, when he believed I could fix everything just by being near him. Evenings were my favorite too. Harjit would come home tired, smelling of chalk and old paper. I'd pour him tea, and Eamon would run to show him his drawings: crooked houses, smiling suns, and stick figures that somehow always had big round eyes like mine. We'd sit together, talk about nothing important, and yet everything felt whole. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just watch them sleep. Harjit snoring softly, Aman curled up like a kitten between us. I'd whisper small prayers of gratitude. I didn't have gold or comfort, but I had peace. I thought peace lasted forever. But peace is a guest, it never stays too long. When Aman turned 12, Harjit fell ill, a cough that refused to go away, a tiredness that no amount of rest could heal. We took him to the city hospital, but money was tight, and medicine was expensive. I sold my bangles, my wedding necklace, every piece of gold I had ever been given. I remember sitting outside the doctor's room one evening, holding the empty box where I used to keep those ornaments, and thinking if these pieces could buy him even one more day, it was worth it. But God had other plans. Harjit left us one rainy morning. The house felt too quiet after that. Even the clock seemed to tick slower. Eamon stopped talking for days. He would sit near the window, watching the rain, and I could see a storm growing inside him. I tried to fill the silence with stories, with food, with prayers, but nothing reached him. I suppose that's when we both began to change slowly, quietly, like colors fading from old cloth. Still, I kept going. I worked at a neighbor's tailoring shop, stitched school uniforms, saved every rupee. I wanted Eamon to study well, to become something more than what life had given us. He did too. He worked hard, won scholarships, and when he got into a college in the city, I cried, not from sadness, but from pride. My little boy, the one who used to hold my dupatta in the market, was now going to walk on his own. The day he left, I packed his bag myself, folded each shirt like a blessing. I put a small photo of Harjit inside the front pocket and said, "Keep him close, Beta." He hugged me tight and said, "Always, Ma." That word, Ma, it sounded so full, so warm. I didn't know it would one day disappear from his lips. After he left, the house grew smaller. I filled the silence with work, sewing, cleaning, cooking for the neighbors' children. I wrote him letters every week. Sometimes he replied, sometimes he didn't. When he did, the letters were shorter each time. From Ma, I miss you every day, to Ma, I'm busy, we'll call soon. I kept them all, folded neatly in an old biscuit tin. Even now, they smell faintly of ink and hope. When Aman got a job, he called to tell me. His voice was different, deeper, faster. Ma, I got the offer. I'm so happy. I cried again that day, not because I missed him, but because I felt proud. My boy had made it. But along with pride, there was a strange emptiness, like I was cheering for him from a distance that kept growing, inch by inch. I didn't know that the distance between hearts can grow even when both people are alive. Aman moved to the city, and slowly, his life filled up with things I couldn't see. He got a new job, new friends, new habits. Every time he called, I could hear traffic, voices, laughter in the background. His world sounded busy, too busy for small talk, too busy for me. At first, I didn't mind. That's how life goes, I told myself. Children grow, they have their own people, their own homes. I used to wait by the phone every Sunday afternoon. That was our time. I would cook his favorite dish, rajma chawal, even though he wasn't here. It made me feel close to him somehow. I'd sit by the window, plate on my lap, and tell myself, he'll call today. Sometimes he did, sometimes the phone stayed silent. When he called, he'd sound tired. Ma, I've got meetings all week. Are you eating well? Beta, I'd ask. Yes, Ma, don't worry. I ordered food. Ordered what kind of food? Oh, pizza, sandwiches. Don't worry, Ma, I'm fine. And I would laugh a little, though my heart ached quietly. There's something about a mother's kitchen, it keeps feeding, even when the plates are empty. He started visiting home less often. First, it was every few months, then once a year, then only on festivals, if he could manage a few days off. When he did come, the house felt alive again. I'd wake up early, sweep the courtyard, put fresh marigolds near the photo of his father. I'd cook all his favorite dishes, aloo, paratha, kia. I'd wait by the gate like an excited child. And when he arrived, I'd hold his face in my hands and say, "You've become thinner. Are you eating enough?" He'd laugh, hug me quickly, and pull away to check his phone. "Ma, I have to reply to some messages. Just a minute." That minute often stretched into hours. He'd sit in the same house, but it felt like he was miles away, eyes on his screen, mind somewhere else. I'd talk, but he'd only half listened once. I told him, "Amen, I saw our old neighbor, Mrs. D'Souza. Her son sent her a new fan. You remember how you both used to fight over mangoes?" He smiled faintly and said, yeah, without really hearing me. That cut deeper than any harsh word. One evening, while serving dinner, I noticed him scrolling through his phone again. I said softly, "Put it down, Beta. The food will get cold." He frowned a little. "Ma, please, I'm working. I asked, surprised. "At this hour. It's important, Ma. You won't understand." Those words stayed in my heart like a thorn. You won't understand. I wanted to say, "I may not understand your work, Amen, but I understand you." But I didn't. I just served him another roti and kept quiet. You see, mothers learn silence. It's not that we don't have things to say, we just learn that love sometimes means holding your words instead of letting them fall. Years passed like that. Then one day, he called and said, "Ma, I'm getting married." My hands trembled so much, I almost dropped the phone. "Oh, Beta, truly, that's such good news." "Yes," he said, his voice full of excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Her name is Ria. You'll love her, Ma. She's kind and modern." Modern. The word felt strange in my mouth, but I smiled anyway. "If she makes you happy, then I'll love her too." I spent the next few weeks preparing for his wedding. I borrowed money from neighbors to buy him a gold chain, baked sweets for everyone in the lane, stitched new curtains for the house. When he came home with her for the first time, I stood at the door with a small arty plate. Ria was beautiful, tall, graceful, polite. She touched my feet and called me Ma with a shy smile. I liked her instantly. She seemed warm, thoughtful. For a while, I thought maybe, just maybe, our home would feel whole again. But soon after marriage, Aman told me they wanted to live in the city. "It'll be easier, Ma. My office is there, and Ria's too." I nodded, though my throat burned. "Of course, Bate, you must do what's best." he said. You can come visit any time, Ma. Or maybe, later, you can move in with us. That later never came. I didn't blame them. Young people have their own pace, their own plans. Still, I waited. Festivals, birthdays, anniversaries, I waited. Sometimes they came, sometimes they didn't. When they did visit, things had changed. They brought gifts, nice shawls, new utensils, but the warmth was different. They spoke more to each other than to me. Ria would say, "Oh, Ma, you shouldn't work so much. Just relax." But I could tell she didn't like the smell of mustard oil in the kitchen, or the sound of old songs playing on my radio. One evening, as we sat down for tea, I asked, "When will you two give me a grandchild?" She laughed softly. "We're not ready yet, Ma. Life is so busy." Aman added quickly, "Yes, Ma, don't start again." Start again. Like my love was a noise they wanted to turn off. That night, when they went to bed, I stood outside their room for a moment, listening to their laughter. I should have been happy he was building his own life, the kind I had always prayed for, but there was a strange ache in knowing that the sound of his laughter no longer needed me. When they left for the city again, I walked with them to the bus stop. Ria hugged me lightly. Eamon kissed my forehead and said, "Take care, Ma. Don't worry about anything." And then they were gone. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Days turned into months, months into years. The calls grew shorter, the visits fewer. I told myself he was just busy. Everyone is busy these days. But deep down, I could feel something shifting. He stopped calling me Ma as often. It became hey, or listen, or sometimes just silence before he began talking. And one day, he said it, "Mrs. Kaur." It wasn't cruel, just careless. But careless words can wound deeply. That evening, after he hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my cup of tea gone cold. I looked around at the house, the faded curtains, the cracked floor, the empty chair where his father used to sit, and I realized something painful. I had built this home with love, but love doesn't always stay in the walls. Sometimes, it leaves with the people you raise. That it was a Sunday afternoon when everything changed. The day was warm, sunlight spilling across the floor in golden patches. I was sitting near the window, sewing a torn pillow cover, when the phone rang. I smiled as soon as I saw his name. "Amen," I whispered to myself. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. "Hello, Beta," I said, my voice cheerful. "I was just thinking of you." He was quiet for a moment. "Ma, actually, I needed to talk to you about something." Something in his tone made me put the needle down. "What happened, Aman? Are you all right?" Yes, I'm fine. It's just, Ria and I were talking, about the house and, well, we think it's time you move in with us." My heart leapt. After all these years, finally, he wanted me near. "Oh, Aman," I said softly, "that would be lovely." "I'll start packing," he interrupted. "Wait, Ma, there's one thing. The place is small, and it might be better if you stayed in the other flat, downstairs. It's separate, but close. You'll have your own space." I paused, a little confused. "Oh, you mean, I won't stay with you and Ria?" No, he said quickly. "Of course, we'll see each other every day. It's just, privacy and all that." Privacy, another new word that didn't belong to my world. I smiled, though my voice trembled. "Of course, Beta, I understand." But inside, I felt something crack, a small, quiet sound that only I could hear. A few weeks later, he came with a moving van. Boxers, noise, strangers. I watched as they carried away my belongings, the old trunk, the sewing machine, the photo frame with Harjit's picture. Eamon supervised everything briskly, like it was an office task. "Be careful with that," I said when they dropped my brass lamp. He sighed. "Ma, please, don't worry about every little thing." I nodded, holding my hands together. Ria smiled politely, but looked restless, checking her watch. When we reached their building in the city, I was surprised. It was modern, tall, with shiny elevators and quiet corridors. Eamon led me to a small flat downstairs, one room, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony facing the back alley. "It's nice, isn't it?" he said, trying to sound cheerful. "Yes," I whispered, "very nice." He helped set up my things. Ria brought in a few kitchen items. "There's a TV, Ma," she said, "and Wi-Fi too. You won't be bored." Wife, another strange word. I smiled. "Thank you, Beta. You've done so much." That evening, after they left, I sat alone in my new home. The walls were too white, too clean, too quiet. I could hear the faint sound of laughter and footsteps from upstairs. Their laughter, their lives, moving just above me, yet somehow out of reach. For the first few days, Eamon visited often. He brought groceries, fixed my stove, asked if I needed anything. Ria joined him sometimes with a polite smile, but soon, the visits grew shorter, then fewer. One evening, I went upstairs with a bowl of Kia. It was his favorite since childhood. When I knocked, Ria opened the door. She smiled awkwardly. "Oh, Ma, we just had dinner. You shouldn't have troubled yourself." "It's no trouble," I said. "Eamon loves Kia." She hesitated. "He's on a call right now. I'll give it to him later." I stood there for a moment, holding the warm bowl. Then, I smiled. "Of course, Beta." I left it with her and walked back downstairs slowly. The stairs felt heavier that night. Later, I heard footsteps outside my door. I thought it was Aman, but when I opened it, the bowl was there, empty, washed, and kept neatly on the floor. Not a word, not a thank you, just silence. Days blurred into weeks. I saw them sometimes from the balcony, laughing with friends, leaving for dinners, carrying shopping bags. I wanted to call out, to ask Aman, "Do you have time for tea?" But I didn't. I told myself he'd come when he could. One afternoon, I went up anyway. I had made parathas, the kind he loved, soft and crisp, with butter melting on top. I knocked. No one answered. I knocked again. After a few minutes, the door opened. Aman, dressed for work, phone in hand. "Ma, I'm getting late," he said. "What is it?" "I made parathas," I said softly. "Thought we could eat together." He looked uncomfortable. "I've already eaten, Ma. Sorry." "Oh, all right. Actually," he continued, glancing around, "Ria and I were talking. Maybe it's better if you call before coming up." "Just so we know, call before coming," I repeated. "It's just easier that way. Sometimes we have guests or meetings." I smiled, nodding slowly. "Of course, Beta, I'll call." He patted my shoulder and left. I stood there in the hallway, holding the plate of They were still warm, the butter still shining. I went back to my room, sat down, and ate them alone. That night, I cried, not loudly, but in that small, tired way only old hearts know, the kind of crying that doesn't make noise, just soft breaths and wet cheeks. After that, I stopped going upstairs. I cooked, cleaned, watched old TV shows. Sometimes, I'd hear Ria's voice through the ceiling, laughing. Eamon's too. They sounded happy. And I told myself, isn't that what I always wanted? For him to be happy. Weeks later, there was a family function. A cousin of his father was getting married. I was excited to go with them. It had been so long since I'd worn a sari and felt part of something. I called Aman and said, "Beta, what time should we leave tomorrow?" He hesitated. "Ma, actually, about that, we thought it might be better if you didn't come this time. It's far, and you'll get tired." "I won't get tired," I said quickly. "I can manage." He sighed. "Ma, please, it's crowded there. And Ria's parents are also coming. It'll just be complicated." Complicated. Another word that pushed me away. I hung up quietly, staring at the wall. On it was a photo, me, Harjet, and little Eamon, sitting between us, his smile wide and carefree. I touched his face in the picture and whispered, "When did you become a stranger, Beta?" That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked to the balcony. The city lights blinked far away like distant stars. From upstairs, I heard faint music. Eamon and Ria were hosting friends again. Laughter, clinking glasses, voices. And then, through the open window, I heard someone say, "Oh, Aman, your mother lives downstairs." "Right," he replied, laughing lightly. "Yes, Mrs. Kaur stays there. She's very independent." Mrs. Kaur, not my mother. It was like hearing my own name through a stranger's mouth. I stood there frozen, the wind touching my face, and in that moment, I realized I had lost my son long before that sentence. I had lost him in the spaces between our calls, in the silences after "Ma, I'm busy," in the unspoken words I never said. He didn't mean to hurt me, but love fades quietly when it's taken for granted. That night, I blew out the candle near Harjet's photo and whispered, "Maybe he needs space, just like the world says." But even as I said it, I knew space was just another word for distance that never comes back. After that night, something inside me changed. I stopped waiting for footsteps on the stairs. I stopped keeping 2 cups of tea ready in the evening. I began to learn what it means to live with memories instead of people. Mornings became slower, softer. I would wake up with the sound of birds, boil water for tea, and sit on the balcony, watching the sunlight creep across the floor. The city was noisy, but my world had grown very quiet. Sometimes, the silence scared me. Other times, it comforted me like an old friend who no longer needed to speak to be understood. I started finding little ways to fill my days. I planted tulsi in a small pot. I joined the temple ladies on Tuesdays to help with prasad. They called me Auntie Ji. And even though none of them really knew me, their smiles filled a space I didn't know was empty. In the evenings, I would light a lamp for Harjit and sit with his photo. I'd talk to him softly about the weather, about the neighbors, about Aman. He's doing well. I'd say, even when I wasn't sure, you'd be proud of him. Sometimes, I'd laugh a little. Remember how you used to say he'd become too clever for us one day? Well, you were right, old man. Talking to that photo made me feel less alone. One day, Ria came downstairs. I was surprised. She hadn't visited in weeks. Ma, she said gently, we're going on a trip this weekend. Do you need anything before we leave? I shook my head. No, Beta, I have everything. She smiled awkwardly. Okay, Ma, take care. I watched her leave and thought she means well. She really does. Maybe she doesn't know how to bridge this gap either. Sometimes, the young don't mean to hurt us. They just live too fast to notice where their love used to be. That night, I opened my old biscuit tin, the one with Eamon's childhood letters. The paper was yellow now, the ink fading. I read one aloud. Ma, I came first in the race today. Papa would have been so happy. I'll bring my medal home soon. I smiled through tears. That little boy, where had he gone? The one who ran to me with scraped knees and open arms. I think every mother loses her child twice, once when he grows up, and again when he stops looking back. But I also began to understand something. Love doesn't disappear. It just changes its shape. It hides in the smallest things, in the way I still cook his favorite dish sometimes, even though no one's here to eat it. In the way I still pray for his safety before sleeping. That's what, mothers, do we keep loving quietly, even when no one's listening. One afternoon, I wasn't feeling well. My chest hurt, and my breathing was heavy. I sat by the door, clutching my shawl. A neighbor saw me, and called Eamon. He came rushing within an hour. His face looked pale, his voice shaking. Ma, what happened? Why didn't you call me? I smiled weakly. You were busy, Beta. I didn't want to trouble you. He knelt beside me, holding my hand tightly. For the first time in years, he looked at me, really looked. Don't ever say that again, Ma, he whispered. You're never a trouble. Something in his voice broke. I saw guilt in his eyes, and I wanted to take it away. I touched his cheek, like I used to when he was little. It's all right, Eamon. You have your own life now. That's how it should be. He shook his head, tears rolling down. No, Ma, I've been selfish. I smiled softly. No, Beta, you've just been living. He stayed with me that night, made tea, fixed my blanket, sat by my bed quietly. It felt like old times, the clock ticking, the faint hum of the fan, his presence filling the room. Before sleeping, he said, Ma, I'll come more often now. I didn't answer. I just nodded, knowing promises are easy under guilt but hard in daily life. But that night, I felt peace. Not because I believed things would change, but because I had stopped expecting them to. The next morning, he left early for work. He kissed my forehead and said, Take care, Ma. That word Ma came back, just for a moment. That was enough. Since then, I've learned to find small joys again. The old radio, the smell of fresh coriander, the laughter of neighborhood children. Sometimes, they remind me that life still goes on, even after hearts have been broken and mended too many times. I don't hold any anger toward Amon. I've learned that love is not about being remembered. It's about continuing to care, even when you're forgotten. Some nights, when I look up at the ceiling, I imagine him and Ria upstairs, laughing, living, building their future. And I whisper softly, may your home always be full of what mine once was, laughter, warmth, and love. That's all I ever wanted for him. Now, when people ask me if I live alone, I smile and say, no, my memories live with me. And in truth, they do. The voices, the laughter, the smell of rain-soaked earth, after school days, the sound of Harjit's harmonium, Eamon's small hand, holding mine, they all live here, quietly, like gentle ghosts who mean no harm. Maybe that's what growing old really is, learning to live with ghosts that make you smile instead of cry. These days, I sit by my window in the evenings and watch the sky change colors, soft orange to pink, and then slowly to blue. There's a kind of peace in watching something end beautifully. It reminds me that everything, even love, even pain, has its own sunset. I think, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't change much. I'd still love the same way. Still wait by the gate when Eamon came home from school. Still cook his favorite parathas, even when no one ate them, because love, my dear ones, is never wasted. It always leaves a light somewhere, even if it's small and quiet. People often say, parents should stop expecting, but how can a heart forget the one it was made for? It can't. It just learns to love silently, from a distance. Sometimes, when Aman visits now, not often, but sometimes we sit together on the balcony. He talks about his work, about life, about the world changing so fast. I mostly listen. I don't ask questions anymore. He doesn't realize it, but I've already forgiven everything. He calls me Ma again, not always, but sometimes. And each time he does, I thank God quietly. Some things, you learn to treasure drop by drop. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. We can't make people love us the way we love them, but we can keep our hearts soft, not bitter, not hard, just soft enough to forgive, to smile, to remember without anger, because at the end of the day, love isn't about holding on, it's about blessing and letting go. So, when I think of Aman now, I don't think of the day he called me Mrs. Kaur. I think of the little boy who ran to me with muddy hands and said, Ma, look, I made a paper boat. That's the version I carry with me, the one who loved me without hesitation. And maybe that's enough, because sometimes, the heart doesn't need to be healed, it just needs to be understood. Be kind, my dears, I whisper to the wind. Love deeply, forgive quickly, and never forget to call your mother.